everybody. Andrew Rogers here for TST Total Sports Talk. Thank you very much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you here for another episode. Like I said, I am your host, Andrew Rogers, and this is TST Total Sports Talk, where we talk everything that is going on major in the world of sports and a little bit of local stuff as well. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, a lot of stuff to get amped about, and a lot of stuff that I got to cover in hopefully as little time as possible, because really when it comes to time and time to do this and time to get this thing up and going and what have you, time is of the essence. And I feel like the more I ramble on, the less I talk about what is important. So without any further ado, there is a ton to cover. What I want to start doing is something I've started doing a little bit more often of late, and that's covering local hockey, because it's so fantastic right now, and there's so much of it. It's more than I ever even realized, to be honest. And it's just such a good thing going on right now with these sports teams that you just cannot cover it. Provincial Junior Hockey League, GOJHL, which is the Greater Ontario Hockey League. It's just unbelievable the level of hockey that's going on right now, and the level of talent and the age group, and it's all good. You know, everything that's happening is all good. So I want to kick off the show today before I launch into my full-fledged segments. Of course, I got Saugeen Shores, Owen Sound Senior B, North Stars, lacrosse. I got that coverage in a segment coming up right in a little bit here. I'm going to talk about the Ontario Hockey League, going to talk about the National Hockey League, I'm going to talk about the NBA, and I'm going to talk about Major League Baseball. Man, there's so much to go and so much to cover, and it's just getting so good right now. And my palate is full. My plate is loaded. I feel like I'm at a Mandarin, just crowding my plate, thinking I can take on all this stuff when at the end of the meal I'm just stuffed. So we'll get to all of my segments in a moment, but first, like I said, we want to launch in a full local hockey coverage, because like I said to you, it's fantastic stuff that's going on. Let me for example here, we have the Provincial Junior Hockey League. They're in their 2018 Schmaltz Cup Finals. We already know one team that's headed there, and that's the Glanbrook Rangers, but they're looking for an opponent. Right now, you got the Stainer Siskins and the Lakefield Chiefs, and these two are absolutely going toe-to-toe. Stainer coming out on top in game number 6 by a score of 4-3 in overtime to tie this series at 3. This has really been a back-and-forth affair between these two clubs. Stainer taking the first 2 games, taking a 2-0 lead in the series. Lakefield Chiefs then winning the next 3, setting up Stainer to come from behind, win game 6, 4-3 in overtime, setting up what is going to be a phenomenal game number 7. It goes Thursday, April the 19th at 8:10 in Stainer to figure out the opponent of the Glanbrook Rangers, which we already know they've beaten the Lambeth Lancers. They are in there in the Schmaltz Cup Finals. They beat the Lambeth Lancers 4-2 on the strength of a couple of really solid wins. This series was very close, but Glanbrook ultimately proving to be too tough a task for Lambeth to overcome. They, like I said, win the series 4-2. So yeah, on Thursday, April the 19th, we have the Stainer Siskins, the Lakefield Chiefs, game number 7. Who will come out on top? That goes in Stainer at 8:10. We also want to talk about the GOJHL. We want to talk right now about the Sutherland Cup. We have our Final Four, and it is well underway. In fact, we've already got a winner out of the first round series, the semifinal series. Our semifinal number 1 saw the Caledonia Corvairs go up against the Elmira Sugar Kings, a matchup of the 1 seed versus the wild card. Elmira came into the tournament having won the 2017 Sutherland Cup, but ultimately they ran into a powerhouse that is Caledonia. Caledonia winning 8-1 in game number 4 to win the series in a sweep, 4-0. They now await the winner of the second semifinal, which is the London Nationals and the Listowel Cyclones. This series has been absolutely fantastic. The first game going to double overtime as London defeated Listowel 4-3. Listowel coming right back in the second game, winning 5-4 in overtime. Listowel then takes game number 3, 5-2. And they also take game number 4, 6-1, to take a commanding 3-1 series lead. The rest of this series shapes up like this. Game 5 goes in London. Nationals trying to avoid being eliminated from the Sutherland Cup semifinals. That goes tonight at the Western Fair Community Center at 7:30. Game 6, if necessary, will go back in Listowel at the Steve Kerr Memorial Arena. That goes Friday, April 20th at 7:30, if necessary. And again, Game 7 will go back in London on Saturday, April the 21st, if necessary, if it does get that far. But it should be absolutely fantastic. This Sutherland Cup tournament has been great. These hockey teams are just fantastic in terms of the skill and the talent and the drive of these young kids. It's just phenomenal hockey, and if you ever do get a chance to get out and watch, please do. I highly recommend it. We're going to take a short break. Coming up, we got the Owen Sound Senior B North Stars lacrosse coverage and the league coverage. We'll get you all tuned up. The season's fast approaching. It's coming soon, and it's hard. I know it's hard to believe with the weather that we've had, but May's right around the corner, if you can believe it. So we'll step aside, and then we'll come back and we'll tell you more about that and what you can expect. We'll be right back. You are watching TST Total Sports Talk. Welcome back to the program, everybody. Andrew Rogers here for TST Total Sports Talk. We've reached the point in the program now where we want to talk about the Owen Sound Senior B North Stars. This is going to be a phenomenal league to cover. I'm extremely excited about this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to it because it's really interesting, this league. I'm not much of a lacrosse guy. I never really have been, but I'm a sports guy. So getting into something like this, I feel like isn't going to be that difficult for me. At least I hope. I had friends growing up that played lacrosse. I was just never my thing. I just never really got into it. I don't know. Maybe I couldn't handle the intensity or the brutality or whatever. But anyways, besides that, so this league seems really intriguing to me because you got 6 teams in the league, and they play 18 games in the season. I think it's 18 or 16. Anyways, 16 games in the season. There's really no room for error. It's kind of a lot like the WOA in a sense because you got so little games to prove your worth in the regular season and to gel as a team before playoffs arrive. And it's just such an intense ordeal, and it should be a lot of fun. So since I'm introducing this league into my program, and since I'm introducing the coverage of the Owen Sound Senior B North Stars, what I want to do now is just give you kind of an idea of the teams that you'll see throughout the course of the season, and as well as give you the schedules for what to be expected for each individual team. We start with the Brooklyn Merchants. Now, the Brooklyn Merchants have moved. They will now reside in Oshawa, where they will continue operations there. They will play out of the Children's Arena. Yes, that is the name of the place where they will play out of. Their first opponent will be the Ennismore James Gang. Their first game will be on Saturday, May the 5th at 7 o'clock. They're on the road, actually, for their first 2 games, coming against Ennismore and then the Kitchener Velocity on Sunday, May the 13th at 7 o'clock. So the Brooklyn Merchants, they play out of the Children's Arena in Oshawa. This should be a really interesting season for them, obviously with the move and everything else, but hopefully they will put out a fantastic team and they can provide a lot of competition for the rest of the league. Our second team that we want to take a look at is the Ennismore James Gang. They play out of the Robert E. Young Rec Complex. Their first game of the season will happen on Saturday, April the 28th at 7 o'clock at the Gaylord Paulus Arena, home of the Six Nations Rivermen. Now, the Six Nations team has been a very dominant team in the Senior B circuit for lacrosse. and they will no doubt be a force to be reckoned with again, as will hopefully each and every team in the league. But yes, the Ennismore James gang get their season underway, visiting the Six Nations Rivermen Saturday, April the 28th, before returning home for their next 3 games in the season. Their first home game is against the Brooklyn Merchants on Saturday, May the 5th at 7 o'clock. Like I said, at the Robert E. Young Rec Complex. Our next team that we want to have a look at is the Kitchener Velocity. They play out of the Waterloo Memorial Rec Complex, and their first game, as mentioned, like I said, will be against as it turns out, they will be opening their season on the road at the Gaylord Palace Arena against Six Nations. It's interesting. Ennismore and Kitchener both will open their seasons at Six Nations, so that's pretty interesting there. Yes, so Kitchener at Six Nations, Saturday, May the 5th at 7 o'clock at the Gaylord Palace Arena. They will open their season at home, their home slate of the season, on Saturday, May the 12th, against the visiting Oakville Titans. That should be a dandy there. But yes, Kitchener, they play out of the Waterloo Memorial Rec Complex, and they hope to be a force in the Senior B League this year. Moving on, we got the Oakville Titans. As mentioned, they will play out of the Toronto Rock Athletic Center. Their first opponent will be your own Sound Senior B North Stars. That will take place at the Toronto Rock Athletic Center on Sunday, May the 6th at 7 o'clock. Then they will travel on the road for their second game against the Kitchener Velocity on Saturday, May the 12th at the Waterloo Memorial Rec Complex. Oakville Titans, they should be a dandy of a team, and they should put up quite a fight. We move on now. First, before we talk about the Owen Sound North Stars, we'll talk about the Six Nations Rivermen. Like I said, they play out of the Gaylord Palace Arena. Their first matchups, they'll open twice at home. Their first home matchup will be against the Ennismore James gang. That goes Saturday, April the 28th. That's your official kickoff to the Senior B season. That goes at 7 o'clock. Then they follow that up the week after, Saturday, May the 5th, at home again against the Kitchener Velocity, before going on the road for a home-and-home against the Oakville Titans Sunday, May the 13th, and then Friday, May the 18th. Like I said, back-to-back there, home-and-home against the Oakville Titans. And then finally, your own Sound Senior B North Stars. They open the season, if you can believe it, with 3 on the road. Their first is against the Oakville Titans on Sunday, May the 6th at the Toronto Rock Athletic Center. That'll go at 7 o'clock, before a back-to-back on the road against the Ennismore James gang. That goes Saturday, May the 12th, and then Sunday, May the 13th. Both of those matchups will be at the Robert E. Young Rec Complex, and then they will open at home Friday, May the 25th at the Harry Lumley Bayshore Community Center against the Kitchener Velocity in the first of 4 at home. And again, if you want to get your Senior B North Stars season passes, you can get them now, but only until May the 1st. They're $50. It's an incredible deal. It really is. Actually, in speaking of which, we have a little bit of a video that we got from the Owen Sound Senior B North Stars that we want to play for you now to get you hyped up on the season that's upcoming. If that doesn't get the blood boiling, I don't know what is. Training camp is continuing on. We got 2 dates here. We got a date on the Saturday, April the 21st from 1 till 3. Sunday, April the 22nd from 1 till 3 as well. Both of those at the Shallow Lake Arena. So definitely make sure to check that out. Senior B North Stars, it's the season is upon us and it is coming. So you better be ready. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, try and get your passes because for Senior B North Stars hockey. It's just Senior B North Stars lacrosse. I apologize. I'm a hockey guy, not a lacrosse guy, but that's okay. I'll make sure to cover it as best of my ability. Should be a lot of fun, and it should be a nice learning experience for me. That's all for your Senior B North Stars lacrosse coverage. We'll be right back after this. Stick around. You are watching TST Total Sports Talk. Welcome back to the program, everybody. Andrew Rogers, your host of TST, here with you. Thank you very much for joining us and tuning in. We want to talk about now is the Ontario Hockey League. The playoffs are a beautiful thing. No matter which level you go, OHL, NHL, NBA, MLB, playoffs are the real deal, and they're a lot of fun. But it's never fun when you lose. It's always better when you win in advance and then get that chance to play for the big trophy. The Owen Sound Attack found themselves in a very peculiar situation by having to go up against the absolute best that the OHL had to offer in the number one ranked Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. They found themselves in a nice spot, though. They were up 2-1 in the series heading into the week that was this past week for your Owen Sound Attack. Let's get you caught up on that before we give you an idea of what else is happening around the OHL. But first, like I said, wrapping the week that was for your Owen Sound Attack. First of all, it was game number 4, Owen Sound Attack and the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds from the Bayshore and Owen Sound. Greyhounds coming out on top 5-2 over your Owen Sound Attack. Sault Ste. Marie getting goals from Keegan Howdishell, his 4th and 5th on the playoffs. He had 2. Taylor Radish with his 6th. Boris Kachuk with his 8th. And Connor Timmins, his 3rd, was the empty netter. Scoring for your Owen Sound Attack was Kevin Hancock with his 6th. And Ethan Zapula with his 3rd. But it was not enough. Owen Sound out shooting the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds 41-39. And actually performing better than the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds on the power play. They went 1 for 4. Sault Ste. Marie going 0 for 3. But it was not enough again on this night. Olivier Lafreniere gets the loss for the attack. He stopped 36 of 40 in the loss, while Matthew Villalta played much better. He stopped 37 of 39 in the victory. This series now standing at 2 games apiece. Heading back to the Sioux for game number 5 as we switch over to that now. The Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds taking game number 5. 4-1 was the final. They take a 3-2 series lead with a chance to go back to the Bayshore and end it. The lone goal scorer for the Owen Sound Attack in the loss was Alan Lethargic, who's having a very nice playoffs. He had his 7th of the playoffs, assisted by Sean Dursey and Ethan Zapula, but it was obviously more than not enough for the Owen Sound Attack in this one, as for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, Barrett Hayden had his 2nd and 3rd of the playoffs. Taylor Radish adding a goal and an assist. His goal was his 7th. Morgan Frost adding his 5th into the empty net to seal it. Boris Kachuk adding 3 assists and Connor Timmins adding 1. Owen Sound going an abysmal 1 for 8 on the power play, while the Greyhounds went 1 for 5. They also out shooting the Owen Sound Attack 31-29. Olivier Lafreniere started the game but was pulled after allowing 3 goals on 15 shots. He was replaced by Matt Guzda, who came in and stopped 15 of 15 the rest of the way. Matthew Villalta continued his superior performance of late. He stopped 28 of 29 in the victory for the Greyhounds as they take, like I said, a 3-2 series lead, heading back to the Bayshore for game number 6. This one was a dandy of a game for the Owen Sound Attack if you're an Attack fan. 7-1 was the score for the Attack as they stave off elimination, sending it to a tiebreaker game 7 back in Sault Ste. Marie. Scoring was aplenty as the Owen Sound Attack featured 7 different goal scorers, 4 players scoring 2 points, all a goal and an assist. Jonah Gadjevic's 1st of the playoffs was the game winner. Aiden Dudas added his 3rd, Ethan Zapula with his 4th, and Alan Lethargic with his 8th. All of those players adding an assist as well. Sean Dursey adding 2 assists in the game. He's been very solid for the Owen Sound Attack in the playoffs. Barrett Hayden would supply the only goal for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. It was assisted by Boris Kachuk and Taylor Radish. Owen Sound obviously desperate in this one as they showed on the score sheet and in the shot department. 46-25 out shooting the Greyhounds. They went 1 for 7 on the power play. Sault Ste. Marie going 0 for 6. Matt Guzda got the win and the start 24 of 25 in the victory. Very impressive for him. While on the other side in the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhound net, Matthew Villalta got the mercy pull after allowing 4 goals on 25 shots. He gave way to Tyler Johnson, who stopped 18 of 21 the rest of the way. Like I said, attack victorious in this one, 7-1. And then finally, yes, game number 7. Who is going to advance to the Western Conference Final? Unfortunately for the Owen Sound Attack, it was the Greyhounds who come out in a shootout. 9-7 would end up being the final score in this one. Sault Ste. Marie winning the series 4-3. Owen Sound scoring was aplenty, obviously, but not enough. Sean Dursey adding 5 points for the Owen Sound Attack, 2 goals and 3 assists. They were his 3rd and 4th. Also adding 2 was Brett McKenzie with his 7th and 8th. He also had an assist for a 3-point night. Kevin Hancock had 3 points as well. He had his 8th goal of the season. Jacob Friend with a goal and an assist, his first. Jonah Gadjevich had 2. Meanwhile, on the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhound side, it was Boris Kachuk doing all the damage. He had the hat trick, his 9th, 10th, and 11th of the season. Like I say, the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds jumped out to a 5-1 lead heading into the third period, where the two teams combined for 8 goals, with the attack scoring 5 of them, but it was not enough. Owen Sound going 2 for 3 on the power play, while the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds went 2 for 5. Owen Sound out shooting the Greyhounds 36-34. Matt Gustas started the game. He went 22 of 29 in the loss. He was briefly replaced by Olivier Lafreniere in the first period, but came back at the start of the second. But it was not enough. Matthew Villalta getting the win, stopping 29 of 36. So yes, unfortunately, the Owen Sound Attack are eliminated at the hands of the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, and we know that they will play the Kitchener Rangers. Let's give you a complete wrap-up of the second round. The Hamilton Bulldogs are advancing to the East Conference Final with a victory over the Niagara Ice Dogs, 4-1 series victory for them. They were very impressive all throughout, winning 3 in overtime and then taking the final 2, winning the first 2 in overtime, Niagara coming back in the third game, but Hamilton winning 4-2 scores in games number 4 and 5 to advance to the Eastern Conference Final, where they will face off against the Kingston Frontenacs. Now, that was quite a win for them. Kingston taking the final 4 games of the series, Barrie jumping out to a 2-0 lead in the first 2 games at home, but Kingston roaring right back, taking all the momentum, including a 7-1 victory in game number 5, winning game number 6 2-1 in Kingston to seal the series. They will move on. They play the Hamilton Bulldogs. We'll have more on that series in just a moment. As we mentioned, the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds are moving on after a 9-7 victory in game number 7 against the Owen Sound Attack. This was quite a series. Owen Sound was in it from the very start, but Sault Ste. Marie proving to be too difficult on this in this matchup, and they will play the Kitchener Rangers, as it appears. Kitchener defeating the Sarnia Sting. This was a back-and-forth series as well, with the two teams trading off victories. Sarnia actually led the series 2-1 after a Game 3 victory, 4-1 in Sarnia, but Kitchener winning the next 3 and taking the series in 6. It'll be Kitchener against the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. We'll talk about that in a moment. First, though, we want to examine the Hamilton Bulldogs and the Kingston Frontenacs. This series will get underway. Hamilton has home ice advantage, of course, as the number one seed. Kingston, the number 3. This series gets underway tonight at 7 o'clock in Hamilton, with game number 2 going Friday, April the 20th, and then game 3 goes Sunday, April the 22nd, game 4 Tuesday, April the 24th, and as you can see, the rest of the schedule there. First 2 are in Hamilton, second 2 are in Kingston, and then our other, the west side, the west final, has the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds against the number 2 Kitchener Rangers. This one will get underway in the Soo on Friday, April the 20th at 7:07. The Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, as the number 1 seed, have home ice advantage. They will have home ice in games 1, 2, 5, and 7, while Kitchener has home ice in games 3, 4, and 6. Game 3 will go Monday, April the 23rd at 7 in Kitchener at the odd, and then Wednesday, April 25th again at the odd in Kitchener at 7. Between these two teams, it should be a wonderful East final and a wonderful West final. These teams are very talented, and they should go toe-to-toe in a absolute slugfest. It should be a lot of fun, and we look forward to continuing to cover it until we crown an OHL champion, and then eventually all the way to Regina for the 100th Memorial Cup. Should be a lot of fun the rest of the way. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with the NHL story. Stick around. You are watching TST Total Sports Talk. Welcome back to the program, everybody. Andrew Rogers here, your host for TST Total Sports Talk. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, it's a pleasure to have you here. We've reached a point now where we want to talk about the NHL story. And why not? I mean, the first round is underway, and it is a lot of fun. First and foremost, I want to mention this really quick in our NHL segment. TST is running a NHL playoff bracket challenge. We will continue to update you on the standings week after week as we go along when we have results in the books. Pretty simple, actually, the way it works. You pick the winner of the series, and you also have to pick the games. And, say if you chose... let's say Nashville in 5, and that would mean they would need to win 4-1. You would get points for choosing Nashville correctly. You get points for the fact that they won the 4 games correctly, and you get the other game, the fact that Colorado then would only win 1 game, and you would get 10 points in the first round for that. You would get 5 points for the 4 wins for the Nashville Predators, and you would also get 10 additional points for the Colorado getting the 1 win. So a lot of points to be had. It should be really interesting. I was able to get 35 sheets in for this challenge, so that should be a lot of fun. Like I said, we'll continue to update you throughout the course of the playoffs. But without further ado, let's get you up to date on the Toronto Maple Leafs and Boston Bruins first round series. They've played 3 games already. They've been quite entertaining, to say the least. Here are your game recaps. Game number 1, Boston Bruins, Toronto Maple Leafs from TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. Boston coming out on top. 5-1 was the final in this one. Scoring your lone goal for the Toronto Maple Leafs was Zach Hyman, obviously his first of the playoffs from Connor Brown and Morgan Riley. The Boston Bruins got plenty of scoring, and they did a lot of damage to the Maple Leafs in this one, particularly on the power play where they went 3 for 6 and outshot Toronto badly 40-27. On the score sheet for the Boston Bruins included David Pastrnak with 3 points, including his first of the playoffs. Brad Marchand had a goal and an assist, his first. David Krejci also added 2 points, a goal and an assist. David Backes' first of the playoffs was the game winner, and Sean Corrali also added a very, very nice goal to cap the scoring for the Bruins. Goaltender Frederik Andersen was peppered, but ineffective, obviously, on this night. He stopped 35 of 40 in the loss. A lot of those goals, though, it's hard to blame him for those. Tuukka Rask got the win. He was very sharp, 26 of 27 when he needed to be for the victory. Boston taking game 1, and they lead the series 1-0. 5-1 was the final. Moving on now to game number 2, also at the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, April the 14th. Bruins coming out on top 7-3 was the final. Scoring for your Toronto Maple Leafs in the loss, Mitch Marner, James Van Riemsdyk, and Tyler Bozak all had it in their first of the playoffs. Mitch Marner with the 2-point night. Morgan Riley and Connor Brown getting assists. For the Boston Bruins, they had a lot of different scores, but none more effective and none more deadly on this night than David Pastrnak. David Pastrnak had 3 goals, 3 assists, his second, third, and fourth of the playoffs. He becomes the youngest player in NHL history to record 6 points in a playoff game. Jake DeBrusk adding his first. Rick Nash, his first, was the game winner. Kevin Miller and David Krejci also adding goals for the Boston Bruins. Maple Leafs actually outshooting the Boston Bruins on this night, 33-28. Unfortunately, the Maple Leafs were not able to capitalize on the power play. They went 1 for 4, while Boston went 2 for 4. That's 5 for 10 through the first 2 games of the series for the Bruins on the power play. That is where they are killing the Maple Leafs through the first 2 games. Frederik Andersen, unfortunately, had a night to forget. He stopped 2 of 5 before being replaced by Curtis McElhinney the rest of the way. McElhinney stopping 19 of 23, unfortunately gets the loss in this one. Tuukka Rask gets the win, 25 of 27, very sharp once again for the Boston Bruins. And finally, it was game number 3 last week between the Bruins and Maple Leafs from the Air Canada Centre in Toronto on Monday, April the 16th. Maple Leafs coming out on top and answering and responding in a big way. 4-2 was the final in this one. Patrick Marleau adding his first and second of the playoffs. James Van Riemsdyk scoring his second. And it was Auston Matthews' first of the playoffs in the third period that stood up as the game winner. Like I said, Maple Leafs improving striking back in the series with a 4-2 victory. Boston now leads the series 2-1. Scoring for the Bruins, Zdeno Chara and Adam McQuaid. Adding assists, Sean Corrali, Tim Schaller, and Nick Holden. The top line of David Pastrnak, Patrice Bergeron, and Brad Marchand were completely neutralized. They went scoreless and put up a -6. Very decent job by Thomas Plekanec and the rest of his line. Boston out shooting Toronto on this night 42-30. But there was only the 2 penalties in the game. Toronto striking on their power play opportunity, going 1-for-1 while Boston went 0-for-1. It was a huge break for the Toronto Maple Leafs as well, as the penalty was for a delay of game, even though the replays clearly showed that it did hit the glass on the way out. Frederik Andersen stood on his head all night long. He was very solid in the nets, stopping 40 of 42 for the victory, while Tuukka Rask was shaky on this night, allowing 4 goals on 30 shots. He stopped 26 in the loss, but the Maple Leafs are back in it. They are down 2-1 in the series to Boston. As we look now at the rest of the series, shakes down like this will start in the West with the Nashville Predators and Colorado Avalanche. At this point in the series, the Nashville Predators lead the series 2-1. Nashville getting 5-2 and 5-4 victories in the first 2 games, while Colorado comes back strong in the third game, winning 5-3. The next game in this series will go Wednesday, April the 18th at 10 o'clock in Colorado, game number 4. And then game number 5 goes Friday, April the 20th at 9:30 back in Nashville. Moving on, we got the Winnipeg Jets and the Minnesota Wild. Winnipeg out in front in this series 3-1 with a big 2-0 victory in game number 4 to put the Minnesota Wild on the ropes. Game number 5, chance for Winnipeg to move on, will go Friday, April the 20th at 7:30. Sunday, April 22nd, will go back in Minnesota in Game 6 if necessary. That time is to be determined. And then Game 7 again, if necessary, will go Wednesday, April the 25th, back in Winnipeg. Again, a time to be for future determined. We move on now to the Vegas Golden Knights and the Los Angeles Kings. It's the only series that is in the books as we stand today. The Vegas Golden Knights, in their inaugural season, get a first-round win in a sweep. What an amazing story. The Cinderella story continues. They earned 2 shutouts in the first-round series against the LA Kings. 1-0 victors in Game 1, 2-1 victors in Game 2, 3-2 victors in Game 3, and then a 1-0 final in Game number 4. All these games, 1-goal games, but very impressive nonetheless. Marc-Andre Fleury with 2 shutouts in the opening round. The 3-time Stanley Cup winner is proving his worth as a Vegas Golden Knight. They will now await the winner of this round, which is the Anaheim Ducks and the San Jose Sharks, which has the San Jose Sharks out in front and dominating. An 8-1 victor in game number 3 puts the stranglehold on the Ducks. San Jose leading this series 3-0. They will have a chance to move on Wednesday, April the 18th tonight at 10:30 in San Jose. If necessary, Game 5 will go Friday, April the 20th in Anaheim at 10:30. Game 6 will go Sunday, April 22nd if necessary in San Jose. And then Game 7, Tuesday, April the 24th, back in Anaheim if necessary, like as mentioned. We switch over now to the Eastern Conference. We got the Tampa Bay Lightning and the New Jersey Devils. Tampa Bay currently out in front in this series 2-1. New Jersey responding well, 5-2 with victors in game number 3 to give a little bit of a pushback against Tampa Bay. Game 4 will go tonight in New Jersey at 7:30. Game 5 will then go take place in Tampa at 3 o'clock on Saturday, April the 21st. Game 6, if necessary, will go back in New Jersey on the 23rd, a time to be determined, and then Game 7, if necessary, Wednesday, April the 25th in Tampa Bay, time to be determined. The Washington Capitals and Columbus Blue Jackets are slugging it out in this series between the first in the Metro and the number 1 wild card. The Columbus Blue Jackets are out in front actually in this series, 2-1, much to the shock of many. All three games in this series going to overtime, with Washington winning the game number 3, 3-2 in OT. Game 4 will go Thursday, April the 19th at 7:30 in Columbus. Then you got Saturday, April the 21st in Washington for game number 5. Monday, April the 23rd is in Columbus to be determined, that time there. And then Wednesday, April the 25th, game 7, if necessary, back in Washington. And then we have the Battle of Pennsylvania between the Pittsburgh Penguins and Philadelphia Flyers. Pittsburgh out in front in this series, 2-1. This series has been an odd one, to say the least. Wednesday, April the 18th, will feature Game 4 in Philadelphia at 7 o'clock. Philly looking to even the series at 2 games apiece, while Pittsburgh's looking to take a 3-1 stranglehold. Game 5 will then go Friday, April the 20th in Pittsburgh at 7. If necessary, we'll get a game Sunday, April the 22nd in Philadelphia, and then Game 7, if necessary, again, Tuesday, April the 24th in Pittsburgh. And then, like I say, the Boston Bruins-Toronto Maple Leafs series is 2-1. Boston at this point. Game number 4 of the series goes in Toronto at the ACC at 7 o'clock. That'll be Thursday, April the 19th. And then Game 5 will go Saturday, April the 21st at 8 o'clock in Boston. Game 6, if necessary, in Toronto. If the series should go that far, will go Monday, April the 23rd. And then Wednesday, April the 25th at Game 7, if necessary, will go back in Boston. The playoffs have been nothing short of incredible, and we only continue to look forward to covering the rest of it as it develops, and as well as the happenings in the NHL Playoff Bracket Challenge that TST is running. That should be a lot of fun as well. We will continue to keep you updated on that. As you can see, the next 3 games in the Toronto Maple Leafs series, as it stands, games 3, 4, and 5, man, they should be, games 4, 5, and 6, they should be a lot of fun across the board, as you can see here. We'll get you caught up on all the happenings to follow next week on next week's episode of where everybody stands at that point. Who knows what we may know at that point, but I'm sure it'll be more than what we know right now. We'll be right back after this with the Raptors and NBA report. We'll be right back. Stick around. You are watching TST Total Sports Talk. Welcome back to the program, everybody. Andrew Rogers here for TST Total Sports Talk, your host. This is the point in the program now where we want to talk about the NBA and the Toronto Raptors. We have reached the point in the season where we had just come to the last day of the regular season when we cut off last week's episode. So what we want to do is give you a wrap on how the season shook down and how it all ended out and where the cards played, because we are well into round 1, but I want to get to that in a moment. First, it was the finale of the regular season for your Toronto Raptors, and that involved a tilt against the Miami Heat from the American Airlines Arena in Miami, Florida. Raptors falling 116-109. Their bid for 60 wins in the regular season comes to an unfortunate conclusion as they fall short. They finish the season at 59-23, while the Miami Heat are at 44-38. They are in the playoffs. We will get to that in a moment. Scoring for your Toronto Raptors, Kyle Lowry had 28. He finished with 10 rebounds, 9 assists, almost had the triple-double in this one. DeMar DeRozan finished with 19.6 boards. Jakob Poeltl with 16 points, 12 rebounds for the double-double. Jonas Valanciunas with 12 and 7. DeLon Wright putting up 9. It was Wayne Ellington's 32 points, 8 rebounds to pace all scorers in this one, leading the Miami Heat to a 116-109 victory in overtime, as mentioned. So as it stands, here are your matchups across the board as the regular season came to an end. Toronto draws the Washington Wizards in the 8th spot. That's who they will play in the first round. You have the Cleveland Cavaliers up against the Indiana Pacers in a matchup of 4 versus 5. Philadelphia 76ers in a matchup of 3 versus 6 against the Miami Heat. And the Boston Celtics get the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round, a matchup of 2 versus 7. That is on the east side. On the west side, you got the Houston Rockets and the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Utah Jazz, the Portland Trailblazers and New Orleans Pelicans, and the Golden State Warriors and the San Antonio Spurs in a matchup of 2 versus 7 at the bottom there. We'll get to all your matchups and where they stand at this point. First, what we want to do, though, is give you an indication of where it stands between the Raptors and the Washington Wizards. Game number 1 taking place at the Air Canada Centre in Toronto. Raptors coming out on top and winning their first game 1 in the opening round in their last 10 attempts. 114-106 was the final in this one. Serge Ibaka was huge on the night for the Toronto Raptors. He put up a double-double, 23 points, 12 boards. DeLon Wright with 18 big points. DeMar DeRozan had 17 and 6. CJ Miles and OJ Anunoby adding 12 apiece. For the Washington Wizards, John Wall had 23 points, 15 assists, but it was not to be enough on this night. Markieff Morris also adding 22 points and 11 boards, also chipped in with 6 dimes, but again, not enough on this night. Raptors coming out on top, 114-106 to take a 1-0 series lead. The series would then continue with game number 2 on Tuesday, April the 17th at the Air Canada Centre in Toronto. Raptors demolishing the Washington Wizards to take their first 2-0 series lead in the franchise history in a playoff series. Raptors 130, Washington 119. DeMar DeRozan was absolutely monstrous on this night. He had 37 points and added 5 boards. Jonas Valanciunas with the double-double, 19 points, 14 rebounds, while CJ Miles was huge, 18 points for him. Kyle Lowry had a very solid night all around, 13 points, 7 boards, 12 assists, while DeLon Wright chipped in with 11. John Wall's 29 and 9 assists were obviously not enough. He could not withstand the incredible pressures that the Raptors put on. They lead the series now 2-0, as you can see here, with the 130-119 victory in game number 2. We'll get to the rest of that series in a moment. First, we want to discuss the other series across the board. You got the Houston Rockets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. They've played one game thus far. It was Houston coming out on top 104-101. The next game in this series goes tonight in Houston at 9:30. Game 3 of this series will then go back in Minnesota on Saturday, April the 21st at 7:30. Monday, April the 23rd will then feature Game 4 in Minnesota as well. That will go at 8 o'clock. Switching over now to your 2nd seed and 7th seed in the Western Conference. That's the Golden State Warriors and the San Antonio Spurs. Game number 1 saw the Golden State Warriors come out on top 113-92. And then they come out on top in the second game as well, 116-101. San Antonio receiving some unfortunate news about Kawhi Leonard and that he would not return for the playoffs. Unfortunately, a huge blow for the San Antonio Spurs and their matchup with the Warriors. Game number 3 will go Thursday, April the 19th at 9:30 in San Antonio. Well, Game 4 will go Sunday, April the 22nd at 3:30, also in San Antonio. Moving on now, we got the matchup of 3 versus 6 in the West between the Portland Trailblazers and the New Orleans Pelicans. New Orleans actually coming out on top in both first and second games of this series. 97-95 in a barn burner in the first game, and then 111-102 in game number 2. They have a 2-0 series lead heading into game number 3, Thursday, April the 19th at 9 o'clock in New Orleans. Game 4 will then go also in New Orleans on Saturday, April the 21st. That goes at 5 p.m. And the final matchup out of the West has the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Utah Jazz. Oklahoma coming out on top in the first game, 116-108. They have a 1-0 series lead. Game 2 goes tonight in OKC at 8 o'clock. Then game number 3 will go in Utah on Saturday, April the 21st at 10 o'clock. While game 4 will also emanate from Utah on Monday, April the 23rd. That'll be a 10:30 start. Moving on now to your Eastern Conference, we'll come back to the Toronto Raptors and Washington Wizards in a moment. First, we go examine the Boston Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks. Boston finishing at 55-27, while the Bucks finish at 44-38. Matchup of 2 versus 7. You have the Boston Celtics leading this series at this point in the series 2-0 with 113-107 victory in Game 1 and a 120-106 victory in Game 2. Game 3 of this series will go Friday, April the 20th at 9:30 in Milwaukee, and then Sunday, April 22nd, and a matinee at 1 o'clock in Milwaukee as well for game number 4. Moving onward, you got the number 3 seeded Philadelphia 76ers and the number 6 Miami Heat. This series is knotted at 1 game apiece. Philadelphia crushing the Miami Heat 130-103, but Miami with a very nice pushback in game number 2 with a 113-103 victory. Game number 3 will then go this Thursday, April the 19th at 7 o'clock in Miami as the series shifts. and then Game 4 will go Saturday, April the 21st at 2:30 in Miami. These two teams, like I said, in a deadlock series, 1 apiece. The Cleveland Cavaliers and the Indiana Pacers. This series a matchup of 4 versus 5 in the Eastern Conference. A very surprising Indiana Pacers victory in game number 1, to say the least. 98-80 was the final. They will do it again tonight, game number 2, in Cleveland at 7 o'clock, before switching over to Indiana for games 3 and 4. Game 3 will go Friday, April the 20th at 7, while game 4 will go Sunday, April the 22nd at 8:30. And then, like I said, finally, the Raptors and the Wizards, the number 1 versus the number 8. The Toronto Raptors lead this series currently 2-0 after 114-106 victory in game 1, 130-119 in game number 2. Game 3 goes Friday, April the 20th at 8 o'clock in Washington, while Game 4 will go Sunday, April the 22nd in Washington at 6. And then, like I said, Game 5, Wednesday, April the 25th in Toronto, if necessary, if it all happens to shake out the way it might. We'll have to see. It should be a lot of fun, though. NBA playoffs, so you got to love them, right? They're fantastic, and the Raptors are looking very poised to go deep in the playoffs should they continue this incredible run that they are on after the great season that they had. This has been your NBA and Toronto Raptors report for this week's episode of TST. We'll be right back after this. Stick around. You are watching TST Total Sports Talk. Welcome back, everybody. Andrew Rogers here for TST Total Sports Talk. Thank you very much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you guys here. We've reached a point in the program now where we want to talk about the Toronto Blue Jays. It's our final segment before we close the show. Toronto Blue Jays, they're off to a nice start. It's actually pretty dandy, pretty surprising, but it's neat. And you know what? I don't know if I should say shocked, but it's very unexpected. I gotta say, I mean, this team is hitting. They're getting some pretty decent pitching performances, and it is accumulated to the record that is at this point in the season. We'll get you wrapped up, though, on the week that was, and then give you an idea of the standings across the league, and then tee you up for the week upcoming for your Toronto Blue Jays. Let's wrap the week that was. This past week, the Baltimore Orioles and Toronto Blue Jays finished their 3-game set. Jonathan Scope drove in 2 runs. Kevin Gausman pitched 6 effective innings, and the Orioles beat the Blue Jays 5-3 to avoid the sweep. Marco Estrada falling to 1-1 on the season after allowing 4 runs on 6 hits and 4+ innings. He had been 7-1 in 13 career starts going into the contest against the Orioles. Blue Jays would then have a day off before traveling to Cleveland to take on the Cleveland Indians. Teoscar Hernandez made his season debut for the Blue Jays, and what a debut it was. Hernandez drove in the go-ahead run with a single in the 7th as the Jays rallied for an 8-4 win, ending the Cleveland winning streak at 5. Teoscar Hernandez was called up earlier Friday when Josh Donaldson was placed on the 10-day disabled list with inflammation in his right shoulder. Due to the incredible ice storm hitting most of the baseball markets, it hit the Jays pretty hard as both their weekend games that were scheduled in Cleveland were forced to be canceled. They will be made up as part of a doubleheader the two teams will play on May the 5th. As for Monday's game back at the Rogers Center, it too had to be postponed when a chunk of ice fell from the CN Tower through the Rogers Center roof, causing a large enough hole to deem it as an unsafe playing condition. It was announced that the game would be made up as a doubleheader on Tuesday. First game in the doubleheader saw the Blue Jays come out on top. 11-3 was the final. Yangervis Solarte went 2 for 3 in the game with a home run and 4 RBIs. The home run was his 3rd of the season. Randall Grichuk also hit his first home run as a Blue Jay as part of the 11-3 victory. Jays exploding for 6 runs in the bottom half of the 6th. It was also enough to credit Jays starter Jaime Garcia with his 2nd win of the season. He struck out 5 over 5 innings of work. On the second half of the doubleheader, the Blue Jays needed 10 innings to defeat the Kansas City Royals. 5-4 was the final. Backup catcher Luke Maile made the most of his opportunity in the nightcap of the doubleheader, going 2 for 4 with 3 huge RBIs in the game, including the walk-off single with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 10th off of Royals reliever Brian Flynn. the Jays, like I said, earning a 5-4 victory in this one. Tyler Clippard pitched a perfect top half of the 10th to earn the victory. So as we wrapped up the week that was for your Toronto Blue Jays, let's now take a look at the standings across the board for all your in the major leagues. We start in the American League. In the American League East, the Boston Red Sox are out in front, 14-2. They have a 3-game cushion on the Toronto Blue Jays at 11-5. The Yankees at 500 at 8-8 are 6 games behind. You have the Baltimore Orioles at 5-12, 9.5 back, and then Tampa Bay at 5-13, 10 back. In the AL Central, you have the Cleveland Indians at 9-6. They are a half game better than the Minnesota Twins at 7-5. You have the Detroit Tigers at 5-9, 3.5 back. White Sox at 4-10, 4.5 back, and the Kansas City Royals off to a very disappointing 3-12 start. They are 6 games behind. In the AL West, you have the LA Angels at 13-4 with a 2.5 game cushion on the Houston Astros at 11-7. You have the Seattle Mariners at 9-6, 3 games behind. Oakland at 8-10, 5.5, and then Texas at 7-13, 7.5 games back. Very impressive off to a start for the LA Angels, and Shohei Ohtani, who's been very solid for the Angels, the guy who can hit and pitch. He's just phenomenal out of the gates for the Angels. And then over in the the National League, you have the NL East. We start with the New York Mets are 12-4. They have a 2-game cushion over the Philadelphia Phillies, who are at 10-6. You have the Atlanta Braves at 9-7, Washington Nationals at 9-9, and the Miami Marlins at 5-12 or 7.5 behind. Over in the NL Central, it's the Pittsburgh Pirates at 12-6. They are 1.5 game better than the St. Louis Cardinals at 10-7. You have the Milwaukee Brewers at 9-9, Chicago Cubs at 7-8, and then the Cincinnati Reds at 3-14, off to their worst start in their entire Cincinnati Reds history. And then your National League West situation is the Arizona Diamondbacks at 12-4, 3-game cushion over the Colorado Rockies at 11-9. The Dodgers are at 7-9, 5 games behind. San Francisco is at 6-10, 6 games behind, and then the Padres at 7-12 are in 5th, 6.5 games behind Arizona in the NL West. In terms of the week upcoming for your Toronto Blue Jays, they have the Kansas City Royals tonight. This afternoon for the closer of the 3-game set. J.A. Happ will take the hill. He will be opposed by Ian Kennedy of the Royals. And then they will go on to New York to take on the Yankees for the first of 4. It'll be Aaron Sanchez, Marco Estrada, Marcus Stroman, and Jaime Garcia, the pitchers for the Blue Jays in the 4-game set. They will be opposed by Yankee starters CC Sabathia, Sonny Gray, Jordan Montgomery, and Luis Severino. And then after that, the Blue Jays will return home to take on the Boston Red Sox starting on Tuesday, April the 24th. In those, the projected starters in that matchups will be J.A. Happ, Aaron Sanchez, and Marco Estrada for the Blue Jays. They will be opposed by Boston starters Rick Porcello, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Drew Pomeranz. That has been your Toronto Blue Jays report for this past week and the MLB situation. We will take one last break. We are going to come right back, and we are going to close this episode of TST. We'll be right back after this. Stick around. You are watching TST Total Sports Talk. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching another episode of TST. Commentators Clothing was made and purchased from Vistaprint. Go to vistaprint.ca for all your custom apparel needs. I want to thank you for tuning in and staying loyal and keeping committed to checking in with TST Total Sports Talk. It's a lot of good things happening, and I think the most important thing on my end is make sure to get these episodes to you as soon as possible. I understand that some people may think, oh, well, what the heck is this guy doing? Why are we got to wait so long? Well, it's I got to admit it, man, it's difficult. I don't have a team of 30 trying to get these episodes, like putting these episodes together. I'm just a one-man crew here. And you know what? It's not a job. This isn't a job. This is a hobby, and I really do enjoy it, I got to say. But the biggest thing for me here is that besides this, I have a full-time job. I have a full-time duty as a husband and a father, and I got a life outside of here. And to mix and match these two opportunities, it's a lot harder than it appears when watching. But I do my absolute very best to make sure that these videos that get put out to you are not poor in quality or not poor in production. So I hope that you guys can appreciate the effort that I put forth and that and the product that comes out, because I really do put a lot of pride into it. So thank you for watching another week of TST Total Sports Talk. This is episode 25 now. So we will continue to do it as long as we can, and as long as you guys keep watching. So thank you very much for that, and we'll see you again next week. Andrew Rogers signing off for TST Total Sports Talk.